She tried so very hard to fill his shoes, working hours without rest, wanted me to have the best. She tried to raise me right, but I refused. And I turned 21 in prison, doing life without parole.
I think that was it, just kind of taking a risk and doing something unique in the audition and just, going for it. And, that's what I think you always have to do, but it doesn't mean you're always going to get the part. As long as you walk out saying, I did it my way, and that's the best I can do. You spent 3 months in we were in a Holiday Inn with a couple of chain restaurants around and a little mini mall. So it was hard. You had to kind of branch out to get some experience off the highway.
It's okay. I'm gonna come right back for
you. This genre is different than any other genre. You put a great piece of content together and get it out there, people are going to come see it. They're going to hate it, they're going to love it. It doesn't matter, they're going to talk about it, they're going to argue it, they're going to debate it. We're inundated with information, with feelings, with experiences. There's not much left on this planet of an experience and a feeling rather than maybe your own death or committing murder. The character breakdown was very unique. I did not get the script in advance. I just got the character breakdown. And in it was a man in a suit, tall. The suit might be off. There was a little quirkiness about the man. But one of the things that I needed to do was sing a folk song in the audition. So what I did is I just looked up classic folk songs and Googled it and found one called Down by the Dead Man. And so I started memorizing this song, and when I was a kid I could play the spoons, so I started playing a little bit with the spoons to try to keep the rhythm. And so when I went in for the audition, I had to do that. And so I busted my spoons out and sang the song, and it actually worked out really well for the narrative of the film. After reading through it, and I pretty much stayed in character throughout the whole audition, even with the readers, even with the casting directors until the end. I was thrilled. A few weeks later, my manager called late at night and said, I had gotten the part, and she was very excited. She goes, "You're shooting in Florence." I said, "Oh my gosh, that's incredible." So that night my wife was Googling all the places in Florence that we were going to go visit, all the museums, all the history and culture. The next morning was a little bit of a letdown when we got some more information, found out it was Florence, South Carolina. So that was not much to tour around there, not a lot of museums. When I got the part, I was initially very worried because I wanted to figure out how do I stand out and make this presence without being able to use words. And I was trying to figure it out. I knew I had it in the eyes. I knew I had to figure out how to portray that. And so at the time, the Los Angeles Zoo had just opened up this gorilla exhibit. And I took my son there, and they had this seating platform. And the gorillas were all up a beautiful space, but all up behind this, thick plexiglass. And I was sitting with my son was, 4. And I said, that's it. That's how I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna be the gorilla behind the plexiglass. And that's how I played it. I kept it simple from the beginning, and if, my eyes could never lead, my head had to. So if I needed to look to the left or to the right, you really just needed to have the mask do the work with you. And slow and simple with that film really worked. I mean, the whole tone of it, the set, the music that Brian chose, it was just the right move. Everyone definitely did have their own personality. I, in my mind, always looked at Dollface as the leader, although people sometimes assume it's me. And it was kind of what I wanted, to her be the lead of our group. Laura, yeah, she just got more action, and it was fun because she's this great, small, beautiful, petite framed girl, who you wouldn't expect to be the brawn of the group, but it came out great. You know, I was kind of envious. I wanted some of that stuff.
She looks like a ghost. You want me to go talk to her?
They don't want to talk.
So in working with Scott and Liv, there was a purposeful separation in the beginning of like, let the characters build before we see each other. You know, there were times on weekends where we'd all go out and have drinks together and let loose, but for the most part, in the beginning, I think there was just a sense that they wanted to separate us a little bit so that when the scenes started happening, you know, they could really get reaction. I do love the scene when Liv opens the curtains, you know, and I get to forcefully, you know, let her know that this is really happening. This isn't going away. We're now here to tell you that there's several of us, and you know, you have nowhere to go. You have nowhere to hide. You have no way to get out. So I like that moment. I like that change in the film. I think Liv and I both, on the day, were questioning, like, you know, will it work? Like, why wouldn't her character see anything in her peripheral? But when I saw the film at theaters for the first time, the audience lost it, screamed. I mean, I heard people be like, oh, hell no. That's what the whole film was about. I think it was at that moment when the film changed, rather than like, what's happening out there, we're really kind of fucked.
Why are you doing this to us? Because you were home.
That's the scariest part of the film, is it's because they were home. Those characters didn't have any evil in them, the Liv and Scott. Like, they did nothing that deserved what they were getting. But that's the scary part about it, is that in today's time, maybe that's the last sensation left, is to kill at random. So that's the way I kind of figured it, is that these three were just looking for that next rush. To make it random, there's nothing scarier than a random act of violence, because you can't prepare for it. You don't know when it's coming. And when it happens, there's no control. The memory of shooting the scene is, at first I had a real knife. What would happen is I would go over with the real knife, I'd have to put it down, there'd be a dummy knife. So I was more worried that I would forget to do that and stab Liv or Scott with the real one, but it was everything that you kind of wanted it to be. It was personal, it was intimate. I mean, we took turns, you know, so that all three of us could feel the exhilaration of it. You know, so it wasn't like just one of us was the murderer. We all handed the knife off to each other while they were still alive and took part of it, took part of the experience, you know, took part of the rush. I think taking off our masks and revealing it slightly just to them only is also what frightened the audience. You know, I mean, they could go online and find out who we were, but during the experience of the film, they didn't get the answer they were looking for, which is the whole time, who's behind the mask.
It'll be easier next time.
This was their first killing experience for sure. And as they drive away, I think they leave inspired and full of energy and life to go do it again. I don't think they're just gonna go down the road and pick houses and just start killing people. I think, you know, maybe they go back, they resettle. It's who they are, reacclimate into maybe their society, but always have that next experience that they wanna go hunt for on the tip of their tongue. When the Mormon boys stop us and, you know, Gemma's character, Dollface, gets out and they ask, are you sinners?
Sometimes.
And you see us drive away. I mean, it just opened up the door for these characters, like, to continue this random act of violence, which could be in the next state, 3 states over. It doesn't matter because they're not from somewhere or targeting anyone specifically. So it's that much harder to catch them. I always had the experience that it was more of a natural-born killer type relationship, where the 3 of us were intimate in our lives, and that we all wanted to take this next step together. We were just this group that decided, this family that decided to cross the line.
I just want to tell you something.
What do you want to tell me?
You are my girl.
I love you, Jimmy.
It's become a cult classic. People, you know, it's talked about, and people, like I said, they either love it or hate it. But for me, I think my overall experience on the film is a great memory, you know, and it's one of those things when you're in the thick of it, you don't know what it's going to produce, but years later, when you get to look back, you think how fortunate you were to be a part of it, you know, and to work with those people. So I'm thankful.